We have Sony A75 leaked specifications that address the bitrate in photos as well as pre-capture and open gate. I can tell you that it's got one, but not the other. Which one? Click subscribe and we'll get right to it. It means more to us than getting the A75 under the Christmas tree this season. Hi, I'm Simon. I love scanning the news and rumor sites, patent applications, and all the pro forums so that you don't have to. And today we have a bumper crop of new leaked specifications, thanks in part to Andrea Pizzini of Sony Alpha Rumors. And it's great. It's great that the Sony A75 can shoot above 10 frames per second, that it can shoot 30 frames per second electronic and 10 frames per second mechanical. But what about raw shooting? What about the bit rate? Would you be happy to know that the A75 can shoot 30 frames per second in 10-bit? No? Well, what about 12-bit? Yes, I'm sure many would, but no, the Sony A75 can actually shoot 14-bit RAW at 30 frames per second, just like the Alpha 1 Mark II. No compromise there, but the buffer isn't nearly as long as the Alpha 1. How long, you ask? Well, we don't know that information at this point, but 14-bit RAW at 30 frames per second, I mean, that's definitely A1 territory, and I think that's a good thing. And for those of you that really like to hold down that shutter button and spray and pray and never let up, it might not be as much as the Alpha 1, but for those of you that know what it's like to get back with thousands of photos, this might, well, give you what you need. And the autofocus system, well, we're told that it can calculate at 60 frames per second, so that's 60 times every second. And now for the headline updates. The Alpha 1 has pre-capture, as does every other camera in the segment, as well as above. Leaving it out of the A75 would be, well, a death knell at least for wildlife and sports photographers. And I'm happy to report here this morning that the Sony A75 indeed does have pre-capture. As I forecast just last week, I said it doesn't make sense that Sony wouldn't include it, and they have. They have included pre-capture, although the details are rather thin at this point. We don't know if there's going to be, well, pre-capture for both stills and video as the competition has. We also don't know if we can adjust, well, or how we can adjust the number of frames, or even if we can assign it to a button and toggle it on and off. In the Alpha 1, we can set pre-capture or pre-burst the record time to between 0.03 seconds to 1 second in 17-step increments. And when it comes to OpenGate, a capability that, well, almost every other camera in the segment has, is now available in the Nikon ZR and in the Canon C50, with a promised firmware update to the C400. Sadly, Andrea said, it's a pity Sony remains so stubborn about not adding OpenGate. Since this is purely a software limitation, there's still hope they may reconsider and enable OpenGate in a future firmware update. Getting it in a firmware update? Yeah, well, we know how generous Sony is with their firmware updates, so I wouldn't count on it coming in a firmware update. If it's not there and you need it, well, then you have a tough decision to make. I'm certainly not crossing my fingers on this one, but when it comes to stills, 13 frames per second, 14-bit RAW, the Canon EOS R6 Mark II can go all the way up to 40 frames per second, but that's at 12-bit RAW. So this morning we get another glimpse into the Sony A75. Another solid update, and that's good news. Based on all the leaked specifications we've been getting for the better part of this year, it was pointing towards the A75 as getting a minor update not worthy of our dollars, but that looks to be changing. It looks to be able to step up to the competition, to not quite be there in some areas, but be a little bit more in others. But if you've overheard anything else that you can share with us to share with our viewers, please email me at simondyates@gmail.com. Okay. Now, for those of you that are a little bit behind on the specifications, let me give you a quick recap. The Sony A75, its photoelectric conversion device, the sensor, is going to be 33 megapixels, and it's going to have, oh, what's that thing called? Partially stacked sensor, just like the Nikon Z6 Mark III. I was going to say the Nikon ZR. And we just covered off continuous shooting at 30 frames per second, 14-bit RAW, and it's got IBIS up to 8 stops. Now, another improvement over the A74 is that it can shoot 4K up to 60 frames per second without a crop. Now, we don't have confirmation on 4K 120 at this point, but that's another prediction that I have, and I expect that one to come true. Sadly, again, no OpenGate. That's an update in this video, and it is getting the AI chip, an updated AI chip that first came out in the Sony A7R5, and also something that came out in the Sony A7R5 is that 5-axis LCD. Not only is the Sony A75 getting that 5-axis LCD, it's also getting the exact same body style, and that's good news. Now, also, this shouldn't be a surprise. It's going to have dual card slots, the traditional Type A and SD card slot, so you can put in 2 Type A or 2 SD cards. And the price, well, it's going to be somewhere close to $3,000. The Canon EOS R6 Mark III, in comparison, sells for $27.99, $28.99 with a motion capture. So I expect Sony to put it right around that same price point. And the embargo is going to be lifted. The announcement is going to be made December the 2nd at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That's around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. London time, and around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Central European Time. And we're going to be covering the event with our expert live guest panel, talking about how Sony has stepped up to the plate, or where they've fumbled. And I think anybody who owns the A7 IV at this point, I think there's going to be something in it for you that's going to have you think very carefully whether you want to update or not. And considering that you've had for those of you that had the A7 IV for 5 years, I think there's going to be a lot of good reason to upgrade. And if you are interested in pre-ordering the A7R5, one other thing to let you know that Andre Pizzini has told us, there's going to be a limited batch shipped in time for Christmas. So if you're really excited about getting, I hate how every camera company seems to do this now, you're going to have to pre-order the A75 if you want to have it under the Christmas tree for this year, not next year. And I've got the pre-order links. Please consider using my pre-order links down below, because it really does help keep the lights on. It keeps this channel going. You have no idea how much that means to me. And if you're looking at buying in the United States, I've got B&H for the United States. Adorama, I'm still waiting to create their links. I haven't been approved yet. They've switched platforms, and we're going through all of that. In the United Kingdom, I have Wex Photo and Video. And in the rest of Europe, I have Photo.co. So stay tuned and subscribe, because as soon as I get more information, I'll be putting out a video to let you know the latest and greatest. I don't sit on information for days like other sites do or other web channels do. I get it out there immediately. So if you're looking to spend your year-end cash, there's lots to buy, and maybe you don't suffer from FOMO, and maybe, just maybe, you want to, well, take a look at some of the really great deals that are on out there. We're talking about pre-price hikes. We're talking about the same sort of discounts that we saw last Christmas, and you were probably thinking, I wish I had gotten that deal. Well, now's your chance. The Nikon Z8 is $34.96. The Z9, $51.96 over at Canon. The R5, the Mark I, is $27.99. The Mark II, $38.99. And over at Panasonic, the GH7, $17.97 with the S5 Mark II, $500 off. And Sony has the A7R5 at $900 off, and the A7 IV at $700 off. And once again, if you do use my links, thank you very much. It really does mean an awful lot to me, and it really keeps this channel going. I don't believe in using those sponsorships. I find them annoying. I get about 3 requests a day, and no, it takes away from the content. If you're already watching YouTube with the ads, I think that's enough. So at this point, actually, let me just check to see if there's anything else I've left out. No, I think I've covered it off, all the specifications. Okay, so we're good. We have just a week and a half to go, and I'm really looking forward. I'm going to put out my live broadcast. I'll probably schedule that over the weekend. I'm just waiting. I've gotten a couple of sources confirmed that it is 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's Toronto and New York time. I'm just waiting for one more confirmation, and then I'll put that out there. And I'm building up my expert guest panel for this announcement. It's looking to be really, really special here. I always love it when camera companies kind of put the best foot forward. And while I think the omission of OpenGate is rather annoying, it certainly seems like Sony is stepping it up with this camera. Now, you as a Canon owner might not think that, or as a Nikon owner, but I think if you look at this with open eyes, you're going to see that, you know what, it's standing shoulder to shoulder with its peers, not in some areas, but in other areas it's stepping above. And that's what we see when they're competing against each other is, you know, one's really good at this and one not so good. Like, for example, the Canon, 40 frames per second, but it's 12-bit, not 14-bit. Anyhow, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to punch that subscribe button. It means an awful lot to us. Have yourself a great day, and we'll see you again soon. Most likely, very soon.